Hi, Emma. I'm Spalding, and I will be your telehealth dietitian counselor today. Um,
Hello.
I see from the referral that you were referred by a medical doctor for elevated blood pressure and cholesterol. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Well, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Life is always busy, but the doctor wanted me to come talk to you, so here I am.
And how are you feeling about your medical diagnosis?
Um, I think like everyone has high blood pressure nowadays, so I feel fine about it. I don't really know what I'm gonna do about it, but it's not that big of a deal, I guess.
That's what I'm here for. Um, do you have any questions immediately, like right off the bat, that you'd like to ask me?
Um, Not really. Like I've worked with a dietitian before, so like I kind of know how these things go, and you're just gonna tell me what I can't eat and like, just like all the bad things that I'm doing in my life, and then we'll make changes, I guess. But nothing like specific.
Not very fun going to the doctor being told what to do. Do you mind telling me what you saw a dietitian before in the past for?
I was trying to lose weight for my wedding, so I met with her 5 years ago, and she just wanted me to cut out like all my favorite things, which I guess like I did end up losing weight, but I just like did not feel like it was super positive, and she was like really judgy, and so I don't know, dietitians I guess are like the food police, so I guess she was just doing her job, but I wasn't like the best experience.
Weight loss is a tough thing to work on, and it can be very like, yeah, it can definitely feel like very negative because it's losing something. Well, did your doctor give you any sort of information when he diagnosed you, or did he just refer you immediately to me?
We talked a little bit about medication, but he doesn't want to use that as like the first step in managing my high blood pressure. So um, he was like, go see the dietitian, see if you can change it that way. And then if that doesn't work, we'll look at medication.
Right on. And you feel more like that you want to take a more like natural therapeutic route as opposed to being on medication, or?
It doesn't really matter to me. I guess it's like one less pill to take. So that's a positive.
Right on. Absolutely. One less pill to take. Are you on any other medications at the moment?
Just like a multivitamin, and then nothing else.
Okay, for sure. And do you feel like there's anything that you already know that you don't need me to tell you about high blood pressure or like the treatment of it?
Um, my doctor talked a little bit about salt. Um, so like we didn't really get too far into it, but I guess salt is like a part of it. And then he said I had elevated cholesterol as well, which I know cholesterol is in things like eggs and probably like fatty foods. So I don't know if I'm just supposed to like cut all those foods out.
Right on. Yeah, you do have some basic knowledge about these conditions. So right on. And I can give you any details about that, of course. I've made a little chart here. It's a little bit difficult on telehealth, but can you see this at all?
Yes.
Um, are there any of these topics that spark interest in you for you?
Um, I think like it'd be best, I guess, just to talk about food, um, since that's what the doctor felt I should focus on first.
Right on. Um, for So I guess with high cholesterol, sometimes lowering your blood pressure is a good way to help that. So we'll discuss. Do you want to discuss food eating for high blood pressure?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, you already mentioned that you know something about sodium. So The diet for lowering blood pressure. Have you ever heard of the DASH diet?
No.
The DASH diet is a heart health diet that involves reducing sodium and reducing intakes of certain types of fats, but only certain types.
Is sodium the same thing as salt? Or like, do I need to reduce both?
Salt is sodium, yeah. And do you feel like you have what do you normally eat? Before I go into how to change your diet, I suppose I should know what you are currently eating.
So my day's pretty busy. And then at the same time, like I love food. And so, especially now that I'm not trying to lose weight anymore, I just basically eat anything I want. Um, my husband does a lot of the food preparation just because I'm at work a lot. So he's not like really the best cook. So often he'll just pick something up at the store if it's like pizza or burritos, lasagna. Um, so it's a lot of just like quick and easy meals. In the morning, I usually just drink coffee on my way to work. And then whatever like is lying around at lunch, I might just have like a packaged sandwich from the store or like a protein bar or something. And then for dinner, whatever my husband makes with like a couple glasses of wine.
Very nice. Well, so if you needed help with changing your diet, your husband's going to be your main supporter and helper with that?
Yeah, he's doing a lot of the food stuff right now. So any changes like he'll have to make for me.
Do you feel like he'll be supportive and encouraging in that situation?
Yeah, he's already like encouraging me to exercise with him and make changes that way. So I think he'll be on board with diet changes.
Can help to have somebody at home pushing you and having you cheerleading for you.
Yeah.
um, so did you say that you usually have coffee for breakfast? You're not really a breakfast person.
No, I'm just like, usually I just like to get up and start work right away.
Get those extra Z's, get that sleep.
Yeah.
um, well, I can tell you some tips for your diet. From what you can help me, I already have some tips in mind. Would you like to hear them?
Sure.
So a lot of sodium is used in packaged foods because they are packaged and need to be preserved for a more extended period of time as opposed to like cooking and then eating them immediately. So they tend to be high. Sodium is a preservative. Salt preserves things. So packaged foods tend to be higher in sodium. There are some, of course, that are lower in sodium. There's foods that don't use sodium as a preservative. They use like citric acid. And there are ways to avoid sodium in your diet, especially with packaged foods. You can track your sodium intake by looking at the sodium content on the nutrition label. And for lowering blood pressure, the recommendation is to keep it below 2,000 milligrams a day. And I would recommend trying to make foods at home so you can track your own diet, but it sounds like you're very busy, so that may or may not be implementable. Another tip for when you are eating at home, if you do eat a home cooked meal, don't add any salt to the foods you eat. And
What's like the big deal with salt? Like, why does salt make that big of a difference? Because it's just like how is that different than like pepper or something?
salt is it's something your body does need. It helps your body balance its water and hydration status. When you have a lot of salt, it makes your body hold on to water because salt attracts water. So when you have a lot of salt in your system, your body is holding on to water and it is like keeping your veins very full, and this stresses them out. This can elevate your blood pressure, and high blood pressure has implications of just sort of making your vascular system work extra hard to pump
Okay.
extra fluid through. Um, well, as far as diet, how do you feel about the tips I've given you? Um,
Um, I mean, it sounds kind of like a lot of work. Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't really make any food right now, so that would be like a really big change to have to make all my meals.
um, well, the foods you mentioned that your husband usually picks up for dinner, you mentioned like pizza, packaged like lasagna and such.
Yeah.
Do you feel that it would be possible to look for things such as packaged salads or pre-cooked skinless chicken breasts or foods like that to make for dinner?
Yeah, we'd have to see like what the store has. Is
Of
that like all I can eat though, is like chicken and salad?
course not. That does sound very limiting, doesn't it? um, though it is tough to include those diet items, those food items that you mentioned previously on a low sodium diet. Those foods tend to be very high in sodium. You can make that sort of thing at home and just cut like for the recipe and cut the salt in the recipe. And there are replacements for it, such as potassium salt. It has a very similar flavor, but it doesn't have the same effect on blood pressure.
Okay.
There are substitutions like that. Do you feel like having less salt flavor in your foods is a large sacrifice?
I don't really know if like I'm not like a big salt eater. I wouldn't say like add a lot of salt to my food. I just kind of eat whatever's there. So I don't know if I'd really notice it that much if I wasn't there.
Okay. Um, so you feel like you could enjoy a low sodium diet as long as it wasn't as limiting as skinless chicken breasts and salad.
Yeah, like I don't want to just eat that all day. Like that's basically what the other dietitian told me to do, and that was so boring.
They're boring, it's unhappy, yeah, like limiting. You don't need limits. Um, and just like some guidance. Can you think of any foods that you do like to make or would be easy for you guys to find at the store that you go to
Um,
with what I'm
I feel like sandwiches are really easy. We can maybe make them like the night before and then I just have to take it to work. Um, they always have those like bagged salads that you can buy. Um, I don't know. They don't really. Could you do like a frozen meal that can be like microwaved?
some frozen meals, yeah. A lot, again, like a lot of frozen food, like it is preserved differently, but it still like has preservatives in it. But I do know of a couple companies that have low sodium lines of products that you could look for.
Okay.
I know Amy's. Have you ever heard of them?
Yeah, they're like that really healthy, like organic one, right?
Yeah, yeah, they do make an effort to have sort of healthy whole grain foods in their products. But I know that several of them advertise as like low sodium, like they'll have it on the package, so you could look for those if you see
Okay.
that look tasty to you. Um, I would like I'm just thinking of like the pizza and lasagna because I do know that cheese tends to have a lot of high salt and it also has a lot of high saturated fat, which is sort of something to avoid on when you're trying to lower your cholesterol. Um, what sort of thing do you like to put on your sandwiches?
Um, just like turkey and cheese and maybe lettuce.
All right,
Nothing too fancy.
for you get like deli slices for turkey.
Yeah.
Um, well, just around that, I could make a couple of recommendations for you.
Okay.
Um, for cholesterol and blood pressure, it's one like broad recommendation, especially for cholesterol, is adding more fiber into your diet. So, um, with your sandwiches, do you use whole grain bread?
Not right now. I just like white bread.
It is has that certain flavor, that certain like tenderness.
Yeah, whole grain bread is like really dry and it just tastes like too healthy.
I know exactly what you mean. Um, well, beyond, well, I just to let so you know, in case that is something you feel like you could sacrifice when you're at the grocery store, if it comes to mind, whole grain bread does have a higher fiber content and is tends to, is healthy, quote unquote. But with deli slices, there's they tend to be salty. They tend to be high in sodium. You could either look for freshly sliced turkey breast that hasn't been treated, or you might cook your own turkey meats like one day of the week or something like that and just cut slices off of that for your sandwiches for the week. If you do feel like making your own lunches ahead of time is something you could do in your lifestyle. And for the cheese, I might just leave that because I know that it can be a key element in sandwiches.
So
Um,
is like one turkey slice really going to make that much of a difference though? How much sodium do I have for a meal?
for a meal, let's say you have 2,000 milligrams spread throughout the day, and your dinners tend to be larger than your lunches,
Yeah,
and you don't really have breakfast.
not right now.
Um, I guess throughout the day, you could probably balance that with like 500 milligrams at lunch and 1,500 at dinner, or 1,000, like 1,000 and 1,000. But to be like clear, that is 1 gram of salt at each meal.
Okay.
So there's probably a couple hundred milligrams in each turkey slice, and then a couple hundred in the cheese, and there may even be some in the bread. I'd have to do an assessment on the ingredients that you use to be perfectly clear about that.
Okay. So a sandwich would be like pretty high in salt though, sounds like.
Not particularly. It's not the on the highest end of salty foods for sure. So if that is something, if turkey deli slices is not a super implementable change, then we can leave that and focus more on dinner if you like.
That might be easier because we can just like pick something up pre-made for dinner that's already low in salt, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, you'd have to look out for things like the sauces that are or the dressings that are available. Check the salt content of those. And I can send you some resources on recipes, like small recipes for replacing those, making your own salts and dressings or sauces and dressings. Would you like that?
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful. Is there like a list of foods that are low in salt that like just like a general list, like these foods are naturally low, so like I won't have to worry too much about those?
Yeah, looking for foods like whole foods or like prepared foods. Like I could compile.
Um, I mean, you could just be like whole foods and then I'll just look for prepared food that have those whole foods in them.
Sure. Um, yeah, I could do that. I could compile a list like that for you and forward it to the contact information that the doctor gave us
Okay.
for you. That is definitely something I could do for you. Um, you mentioned caffeine. You drink coffee. Is that you only have coffee in the morning?
Um, I mean, I probably have like 2 or 3 cups throughout the day just to like keep the energy going.
That's fairly moderate intake. Doesn't sound like you're overdoing it too much.
I mean, I don't think so.
um, is it something that you feel like you could limit? Maybe just like 2 cups a day?
Not right now, no. I'm like really busy at work, so I just want to keep drinking my coffee.
I understand that. Absolutely. Um, do you have any history of smoking?
No.
Excellent. I mean, not to cheerlead or anything, but like, yes, that is a broad medical recommendation is do not smoke. Um, all right. So we're still focusing on diet. you feel, or is there other areas that you feel like you'd like to work on?
I don't really want to make too many changes right now. So, yeah, I think just diet. So it sounds like I just need to not eat lunch meat and not add salt to my food.
Those are some, yeah, that is some good basic recommendations. What are some other things besides the lunch meat? Like, did you like the recommendation of the make cooking your own breasts to cut up for the week, or?
I probably won't do that, no. But we can like focus on dinner, like you said, instead, since that's kind of the biggest meal.
Sure. Oh, and I just remembered, like, I personally haven't bought deli cuts in a long time, but I do remember that there are some that are packaged and advertised as low sodium. They come like in a vacuum sealed package or something. They're not like deli fresh or anything, but they are
Okay.
on the shelf. So there are low sodium packaged meats that you can look for in the grocery store. I will send that on the list as well. And then for dinner, so your husband prepares most of the food,
Yeah.
and he usually picks something up from the store pre-made. Is there anything he does know how to make or is willing to make?
Um, I mean, we could probably like boil noodles and add sauce. That wouldn't be too hard. Or like those packaged salads are easy.
Packaged salads, excellent. But do look out for the sodium content of those dressings, and perhaps look for an alternative dressing to keep on hand that is low salt or just oil and vinegar or something like that.
Okay.
Um, so you said pasta. You like pasta? Pasta?
Yeah.
I know for a fact that there are sauces that are like have low sodium, that are designed to be low sodium, or yeah, and noodles don't have sodium unless you add salt to the water.
Okay.
Pastas are low salt. um yeah, what sort of pasta sauces do you like?
Probably just like a red tomato sauce.
Do you know how to make that yourself?
No, definitely not.
Absolutely. um would you like a recipe for it, or that's probably or
I think we'll just stick to the jar right now, and then I can just like read the label to see how much salt is in it. So that will be like easy.
There you go. Yeah, and just like checking the label and keeping track of that. Have you thought, hmm, so how do you feel about the information you've received so far? Do you see sort of a, I always do that, sorry. I always do the thing where like ask a bunch of questions and don't let you answer the first one. Question, how do you feel about the information you've received so far?
I think it's okay. I wasn't like super looking forward to making changes, but it sounds like I just need to be a little more aware of what's in the food I'm eating. Um, and cut out some foods, but not everything.
Yeah, not everything. Exactly. Um, and it doesn't have to be a super limiting. It's not exactly limiting. It's more just like, yeah, it is changing though. It can be changed, and it's a different way of thinking about food. And how will you, do you have any sort of, can you think of any things that will help you keep track of your sodium and remind you to check the labels and such?
Um, I don't know. I guess I'll just have to remember before I eat anything.
That can be tough. Um, I have a recommendation for tracking your sodium, if you'd like to hear it.
I don't know if you're keeping time, but I think it's been longer than 20 minutes.
Right,
I
right.
just don't want you to be like going on more than you need to, unless you want to keep going.
I'd like to get through the full
Okay, we can
everything.
do that. I just didn't want you to like be going past what you needed to.
Oh, I'm in overachiever mode right now. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so keep going then.
um, Distracted. What goals do you feel like you could set for yourself this week?
Um,
A goal.
well, you said I have 2,000 milligrams for the whole day. Um, and so I think a goal this week will just be to stay under that 2,000 milligrams. Like, I don't even know how much I eat, like how many milligrams I'm eating right now, but hopefully it's like not that much far over.
It may surprise you. Sodium is very high in a lot of things, but I think maybe, how do you feel about like a goal this week of just educating yourself on the items that you have around you and just looking at your food labels and maybe writing out a meal plan? Have you ever meal planned before?
Not really. It's just kind of like whatever sounds good, I'll eat that.
Um, well, maybe make a meal plan for a day and then go and look at the foods on that meal plan and their sodium content and tally it up for the day, just as sort of an awareness exercise. How do you feel about that goal?
That's probably a good place to start, like learning more about what foods have salt in them, and then that'll like set me up better down the line when I'm making food choices.
There you go. And just, yeah, set you up for making food choices with the education in mind, and just
Hmm.
yeah, educating yourself and just letting yourself know. But at the end of the day, because it is at the end of the day up to you and your dietary choices and how you would like to feel satisfied in your diet, and as far as like healthy as well. Um, well, and how do you feel in your confidence, your ability to educate yourself and with your own resources?
I mean, we can probably like go over it today, so I feel like pretty confident in it.
You've got some time today for that?
Yeah.
Awesome. Um, do you perceive so time's not a barrier, anything else that might come up that do you feel like you have the ability to read nutrition labels and know where sodium is on the nutrition label?
Um, I think so. I haven't really looked at labels before, so that'll be kind of new, but it just says sodium, and then that's how much is in the whole thing, or like what is that number?
It will be labeled as sodium, and then at the top of the nutrition label, it'll say it'll have serving recommendations. So the sodium listed on the label is per serving. So if a
Okay.
package says it has 2 servings, that'll be what will be in half of that package.
Okay.
And I can also send you a little tutorial video that I've made before on reading nutrition labels. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, that'd be really helpful.
All right, I can send that. Any other barriers you can think of at the moment? And any other questions coming to mind?
No, I think the biggest thing will just be finding time to like make these changes and slowing down a little more around meal times so I'm not just grabbing whatever's easiest, but knowing more about what's in the food.
Exactly. Just the education, self-education, and learning more. Um,
Yeah.
and I will be sending you the food label tutorial and the list of low sodium foods and food products. And would you like some information on, I have a whole thing on the effects of high blood pressure and some other therapeutic from the Department of Health. It's kind of a book, but would that be something you'd have time to read for yourself?
I don't know if that would be like too much information for me right now. So I think like we'll focus on food, and then maybe if it like doesn't get any better, then we can read through that. But I don't want to like have too much to read right now.
Sure, sure. It can be a lot overwhelming. And yeah, just a lot to focus on. It's the weekend. We'll focus on just the one small goal before we meet again or before you meet with another dietitian of just surveying the food products that you usually eat and what's available to you and sort of knowing how much sodium you are consuming currently.
Okay.
And then
Sounds good.
we can go to alterations from there. All right, so adding in a little time reading food labels. That's it. All right, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like that's answered all of your questions, or like that's something you can walk away with?
Yeah, I feel like this was helpful because I didn't really know, like I wasn't adding salt to my food, so I didn't really know why, like I needed to make changes. But now that I know more about like what foods have salt in them and what salt does to my blood pressure, um, it's easier to understand like why I need to make these changes.
Happy to help. And let me contact me. Feel free to reach out on email if you have any further questions about that sort of thing.
Okay,
Awesome. Well, it's been nice to meet you, Emma, and I hope you have a good weekend.
thank you.